often get asked, your NetherMetro, how does it work? Well, I thought I'd make a tutorial for you guys. So here we are on the Mystercraft server in the NetherMetro Nether Hub, and it's not the first NetherMetro that I've built. I have been building the NetherMetro for quite a while now on several different servers. Obviously, this is the one on the Mystercraft server, and this is the one on the FamilyCraft Patreon server, and this is the one on Mumbo Jumbo's Patreon server. But the first NetherMetro that I built was on MumboCraft Season 2, and it was very loosely based on an 8-track selection system by Xisuma. So I'll put a link to his video down below so you can check that out. But mine has a lot of updates and changes, and I believe it works better. So I thought we'd look at how this thing is built, and let's have a look at that. So here we are in a completely stripped away version of the NetherMetro, and you can see down below we've got all the redstone is visible, all the tracks are visible, and yeah, let's have a look at how this thing works. So we'll start by looking at the station itself. I tend to make these to a fairly standard design. You've got the 8-track selector on the one wall, usually on the wall where you've got the waiting minecart, so you can actually hop in the minecart and still change the destination. That's just how I like to do it. I like to indent it, so you've got the stair blocks at the top and the bottom, and it looks nice indented into the wall like that. You've got a cactus on the other side, so incoming minecarts will go round and hit the cactus with the minecart dropping into a hopper there. And you've got a button behind the minecart, so you press the button and it sends you off down the track, depending on which track you've selected. So that's all very simple, but how does the actual track selection work? So here we are behind the track selector, and you've got a comparator coming off the back of the track selector. Redstone dot, comparator, redstone dot, comparator, and this keeps the same signal all the way down. So if we select, for example, line 3, and I look round the back here, this redstone dot, I can press F3, and on the right hand side there you will see power 3. And this carries all the way down to here, where it is then reduced by 1 to power 2. I'll explain why in a little while. But this comparator, redstone dot, comparator, redstone dot will carry the same signal all the way down. You could have comparator, 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 but this is the most redstone efficient way of doing it. And it carries the signal down from kind of halfway up the wall to underneath the station. Now you may notice that looking down the track, we've got line 3 selected, but currently if we went down the track we'd go down line 1. So why is that? That's a bit weird. What that is by default all of these tracks, as you can see, are pointing back towards the station. So any minecart returning from any of these 8 tracks will always come in here and go straight back towards the station, and then go around this corner to the cactus. This is by design. We don't want to change these tracks until there's a minecart leaving, and that's what this detector rail does. So when you hop in a minecart and press the button, you pass over this detector rail. That is when these tracks switch. So if I place a minecart on the detector, you will see those first 2 have now switched, and it will take you down track 3. As I change this, you will see they change all the way down to the end, and then that's now going to the final one, and when I flick this they'll all change back to the first one. But how do I stop the signal from going down here until we've got a minecart ready? Well, just below that detector rail is a small circuit with a cooldown timer. Cooldown timer is made with two comparators. The detector rail is above these redstone here. That comparator goes into a block with redstone at the side of it. And what happens is the signal goes round here. Once the detector triggers it, you've got a signal strength of 15 here. It drops to 14 there, goes round the circuit. That then becomes 14, that becomes 13, it goes round again, and it keeps dropping by 1 every couple of ticks. So it slowly drops the signal strength back down to 0. But while it's powered, while it's still cooling down, this torch will turn off. This torch goes via a repeater into the side of a comparator on subtract mode. Because this repeater's here, this signal strength is 15 when there's no minecart. So when the minecart goes over there, this turns off and this signal strength hits 0. So while it's 15, this is in subtract mode, so any signal strength minus 15 is going to be nothing. There will be no output. But as soon as there's a minecart there, now this is turned off, so you've got a signal strength of 0 coming in the side. Anything minus 0 is itself. So the signal will actually pass through. So if we select something other than track 1, we've got the signal coming down from the top. And if we look at the signal strength, there we've got a power of 4 because we've selected track 4. We drop the signal strength by 1 here, so we've got a power of 3. And that power of 3 passes all the way through here to here. So that's still power 3 on the other side. So why do we drop the signal strength by 1 here? Why do we need these two bits of redstone together to drop the signal strength by 1? Well, it's because of the way the tracks are set up. When we on track 1, line 1, obviously we want to go down the first track. But when we're on line 2, 3, 4, in this case we'll do line 4 because we're there. We want to go down the fourth track, so we want to turn the first 3, 1, 2, 3, to straight on. So for track 4 we're only turning the first 3. So we reduce the signal strength by 1 over here, so that when it gets passed through here, if we look at the signal strengths, we've got a signal strength of 3 there, which is still 3 to turn off the first one. Then this little bit here, we've got a single item in the furnace. That gives a signal strength of 1 into the side of a comparator on subtract mode. So that subtracts 1 from the signal strength coming in the back of the comparator. So we have the signal strength of 3 there. We subtract 1 for a signal strength of 2 there. Same again, signal strength of 1. And then because we're going down the fourth one, we don't want a signal strength here. So we've reduced it by 1. That's a signal strength of 0. This track doesn't get switched. Now, we don't need to reduce the signal strength before the first one because we've already done it by 1 over there. So there is no furnace before the first track, and obviously the last one will always point that way because there's no reason to change it to go straight on here because there are no more tracks. So there is no furnace here either to reduce the signal strength by 1 for the last track. It's simply not needed. So for 8 tracks there should be 6 furnaces with their comparators. All of them have a single item inside to reduce the signal strength by 1 all the way down. But Jam Doggy, I hear you cry, what happens if these tracks default to the other direction? What happens if by default the track is going this way instead? Well, that's very easy to fix. You need to have these tracks permanently powered until they don't need to be. So what you do, this whole arrangement here, you move it down by 1 and backwards by 1, and replace the redstone dots with redstone torches, so that the redstone torch is directly below the block under the track. This means that as the signal comes along, it will turn off the redstone torches and switch the tracks that way. So that's the track selection system. What about the tracks themselves? There are 8 of these, and I've actually set these up so that you've got 4 on one height and 4 on another, but that doesn't need to be the case. You could have these going down, and you can have them obviously going round corners and weaving around underneath each other. But I found if you start with this arrangement, then it's easier to kind of take the tracks after that to wherever you need them to go. But you've got a single track, and I almost immediately, as soon as possible after coming through the station, switch to double track. This is to avoid collisions between minecarts going in opposite directions. With this arrangement here, they can still kind of crash on this point, but that's like 6-7 bits of track on a line hundreds of blocks long usually. And if a collision happens here, then the person coming into the station could hop out of the minecart quickly. They'll get bounced back, but if they hop out quickly, they're near the station they want to go to. The person coming out of the station will get bounced back and end up in the cactus, where they can just hop in another minecart and try again. So it's not a big deal to have these short stretches of single track near a station. It's very rare that a collision does occur, but it can do, and it's not too much of an issue. But for the hundreds of blocks journey, you want single track. You don't want to crash into somebody else, come in the other way while you're on your long track journey. So I found that this arrangement works best. We come from the single track, take 2 corners, and then move over to the left hand side. Coming into the station, we're still travelling again on the left hand side, and we will go straight over and into the station. Now the reason I chose the left hand side is because internationally most rails in the world travel on the left hand side. Yes, even in America, where cars drive on the right hand side, railways travel on the left. So now we've looked at the tracks, let's have a look at the minecart collection and return system. A minecart will come in to the station and hit the cactus. That breaks the minecart, which is then collected immediately by the hopper. A player in the minecart will get dropped at the side of the cactus into this space. This space is here because we have a cactus here. A cactus cannot have any half slab, any block next to it. So we end up with this kind of pattern around it where the floor can't continue. And it turns out that the player will usually drop at the side of the cactus here. But that has also been incorporated into the wall design. So you've got a space there but the wall has been designed so you can't really see the space. So when the minecart is broken by the cactus, it goes into this hopper. That goes underneath and into this dropper elevator. Now the design for this dropper elevator is quite simple. You've got a comparator coming out of this bottom dropper where the minecart goes in. So when the minecart goes in there, it powers the comparator, which turns off this torch. This torch is stopping this redstone clock. You've got a hopper clock. 2 hoppers pointing into each other with a single item between them. So when that torch turns off, that item starts bouncing backwards and forwards between the 2 hoppers, which causes a signal on this comparator, and that sends the signal bouncing up through this chain of redstone torches. On the side of the redstone torch tower, you have these redstone torches which power the droppers, and it will power the dropper in front of the torch and the one below it. At the top we've got this line of hoppers. This one hopper must have a space above it to be able to collect the item. If it has a solid block, it cannot collect the item. It will treat the hopper as a solid block, and the item will pass through it upwards. So you must have a space above this one hopper. That hopper puts the minecart into the hopper chain, which passes it to this chest. Again, this chest must have a gap above it, 2 block gap. Otherwise, if you can't open the chest, that means that nothing will be able to be put into the chest by a hopper. So always keep a space above that chest as well. That chest, which is currently full of minecarts, passes through this hopper into this dispenser. This dispenser has 2 pieces of track powered. Obviously it can be more if you prefer, but 2 works quite well. This track is powered by this lever here, which is positioned such that it doesn't power the dropper, the dispenser, sorry, and won't affect the hopper behind it, and doesn't affect the redstone on the other side. Now, the redstone on the other side is actually connected to this button, but done in quite a clever way. So, when we press this button, it powers this track underneath the minecart and sends it on its way. But it will also power this redstone line, which carries the signal up to this block where there is a redstone torch on it. So when you press the button down below, it actually turns off this redstone torch and nothing will happen. The minecart will go off and then this button will turn off. It will pop back up. This unpowers the track, but also turns this torch back on, and it is then that the dispenser will put out a minecart and it drops down the hole. This means that the minecart from the dispenser will only appear after a player has moved on. There is no minecart here, and this track has become unpowered again. So let's have a look at that in action. You've got the hole here. When we press the button, it will send the minecart off, and another one drops from the ceiling to replace it. And that's it. That's the entire NetherMetro. That's how a hub station works with the 8-track selector. You can have a single station which doesn't have the track selector. It doesn't have 8 tracks coming off it. It will just have 1 track, but it will still have the collection system with the dropper elevator and the dispenser up above connected to this button. So in a minute we will look at how to build this thing, and I will repeat this build so that you can see how it all works and how it all fits together. But first we're going to look at methods of powering the track. So these tracks coming out the back, at the moment, they're just powered with levers stuck on the side of the track. But that's not always possible. There may be a redstone line running beneath here and you can't use a lever. Or it may be too close to another block. You might have something here that you can't break. So there are other ways of powering track, and there's plenty of ways, and one of them will always work. So if you've got a solid block at the side of the track like this, then you can power this block. You can do that by either sticking the redstone torch on the side of the actual track block or on a separate block beneath. This then powers the block above, and because the block above is next to track, it will power the track. Of course, you can just put a redstone torch directly under the block. That also works. Or you could use a lever, either on the side or beneath. Or you can use a lever on the block at the side. And obviously this lever could be any position on the block. Could be on top, could be on the side, could be on the bottom. But occasionally you'll have some kind of redstone here and you don't want to affect it. In some extreme circumstances I have used this method where you've got the block there and the easiest way to power it is to use a redstone torch with a repeater into that block. But again, whatever works. Okay, so your first task is to figure out where you're going to have your 8 stations. Normally these are hidden from view. You could have them visible. It's entirely up to you. But wherever they go, you've got to have a lot of space in this direction. Because each of these tracks is going to go off in a different direction. And they may wind around each other a little. Some will go up, some will go down, some will go straight. But whichever you choose to do, you're going to need a lot of space immediately here. So figure out an area where you've got a lot of space kind of behind the wall to work in. So you make your 8 tracks. They go off in this case in this direction, but you could actually reverse it if you wanted to, and bring them all this way. But if you do bring them this way, you might want to add a little bit of extra single track, otherwise you're going to start crashing into the redstone for the return system. And then you want to build your station on the end of it. I've left a 2-block gap between the first track and the corner here, where you go to the cactus. But it's entirely up to you. You can adjust it. And obviously we've got the indented wall here for your track selector, which needs to be a 3x3. So we're going to start this off by placing your item frame there with your arrow in it. Now you put the arrow in because it won't make any signal until there's an item in the item frame. When you place the comparator on the back, you want a signal to work with for testing. So it's a good idea to put something in the item frame. Of course, as I've said, it doesn't have to be the arrow. The arrow points to there for the first track, but you could use something else. You could use a grass block and say the green area points towards where you want to go, because as you rotate it, obviously the green area changes to point to somewhere else. But arrow seems to make the most sense. But as long as you put something in the item frame, then you've got a signal to work with. We will also place the cactus here. Obviously you need a piece of sand. It can be red sand, it makes no difference, depends on what you want it to look like. place the cactus, and the cactus will need a half slab on top. The half slab on top stops you from being able to walk into it. You can't walk into the side of the cactus, and it protects you from taking any damage. And the next step is to start placing some tracks in. So you're going to need a sloped powered rail here, which we do if we place a powered rail on top of there and then a powered rail there. This becomes a sloped powered rail. The one immediately after it must be a non-powered rail. So once those two are in, we can remove this one and this will stay as a sloped rail. The next one you want is your detector, and then you want a couple of powered rails to keep the power going to send you off on your way. This detector is the one used for the actual track switching. Coming back in from that direction, we'll have a couple of powered rails. Then we want to go off in this direction, so I'll have powered rails going in that direction, and we'll put a piece of track there. Now, if the track, like in this case, points in the wrong direction, so that when you come in from there you're going straight on, and when you go from here you're going straight to the cactus, then all you need to do is to put a lever right here, and then when you place the lever, turn it on and the track will go to the correct direction. We'll also place another lever here and turn that on to power this bit of rail, another lever here, turn it on to power this bit of rail, and another lever underneath there and power it to turn on that bit of rail. What you don't want to do is to power this bit of rail by powering this block, because we're going to have a hopper in this hole. If you power this block, then that hopper is not going to work because the block's powered. So we'll keep power away from this block. Always power either this one or this one. Keep the power at least one block away from the hopper. So we're now on to the 8 tracks. These are all very simple. We're going to place powered rails staggered like this all the way down, and then we're going to place unpowered rails in between them all. And this is the point where you can figure out what the default direction for these tracks are. If, like this, the default direction is correct, then you're going to use the same system that we've got over here with the redstone dots. If the default direction is the other way, then you're actually going to use the system where you've moved this down by 1 and you're placing redstone torches. So that's it. Now we need to power all of those rails, which you can do by placing a lever on the side of them or underneath, whichever's easier for you. I'm going to place them underneath for now. Because placing them underneath shouldn't interfere with the redstone that you've got here. As you can see, I've got the levers all underneath there. I prefer to put them underneath because then they're out the way, you can't see them. It also allows you to have things like, I don't know, glowstone with glass on top here. Because if you've got a lever here, then you can't put, I don't know, glowstone there with a piece of glass on top. And I quite like the design where I fill these gaps with glowstone and then have 2 pieces of glass above each glowstone. I use glass on the corners because as you travel along the track and go round a corner, you're not glitching into a solid block and taking suffocation damage. If it's a glass block, you'll be fine every time. So same again with these ones. As you can see over here, I've actually powered these bits of track underneath in exactly the same way. But yeah, we'll sort those out. We'll sort those out later. Let's crack on with the comparator. So on the back of the comparator, place a block on the bottom of your 3x3, because this one is the one with the item frame in. So when you place the comparator, it's taking the signal from this middle block. Now we want to move the signal down from here. So once we've got the redstone comparator on, we can place a block on the front of that comparator and then have a redstone dot beneath it, which would be there. So we'll make a little space there and we'll place a piece of redstone in the gap. So you can test that by pressing F3. Looking at the redstone wire, you can see it has a power of 1, which is fine because the arrow is pointing up to there. So we'll continue this ladder going down. We'll place another one there, another hole, and we can take a comparator signal out of the block that the redstone is on, like that. And again, we will make another redstone dot. Now, we don't want to go down too far or get too far away from everything else. So what we're actually going to do here is we will put our next one going in that direction. As before, we can take a signal out of this block using a comparator, like that. And we'll place a block on the front of the comparator and place redstone beneath it. Again, we've still got power 1 at this point. As with the other bit, I'm going to reduce this power by 1 there. So we're going from 1 to 0. Now, because we're dealing with a 0, I'm actually going to turn the dial to a different position. So 2, 3, 4. Straight down gives a signal strength of 4. So at this point, we've got a signal strength of 4. That's now a signal strength of 3. So 3 is what we're keeping. So we'll go straight into a solid block, then into another comparator, then into a solid block. And then we shall continue that. We'll have another solid block there and there with comparators between them. So that signal of 3 is now going all the way through to this block. Now we want to figure out the actual track switching. So on the back of the rails, if we place down another comb shape, and we can stop on this 7th one, we don't have to do it all the way to the end. Now we've got to get the signal from here to here, and we're going to do that by placing that there. So now if we place a redstone dot there and press F3 to look at it, we can see we've still got power of 3 there, which is great. So along this entire comb here, we're going to put in comparators in the bottom of each trough, and we're going to put a redstone dot on the top of each of these. And you will see that all of the tracks have now switched because we're not reducing the power as it goes along. That's perfectly normal. Now all of the ones that are between two tracks we need to set to subtract mode. And then we're going to place 2 blocks coming out the side of it. And we're going to place a furnace on the end of each of these. So there should be 6 furnaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Fantastic. And we're going to take a comparative signal out of this furnace for all 6. And we're going to place a single item in the furnace. Doesn't matter what the item is, as long as it's a single item. So there we go. Now all of these are reducing the signal strength by 1, and we should see that only the first 3 tracks are switched. Fantastic. So now is a good time to check that it's all working by simply rotating this and checking the tracks, and you should see as you rotate it each track changes, and then when you go back to the first one all of them change. So now we need to connect up this detector rail, which stops that happening when you rotate this. So underneath we're going to place a repeater into the side of that comparator and put it into track mode. Then we're going to have a piece of redstone and a torch on the side of a block. So let's have the 2 blocks there. I'll make this thing here. So this small 2x3 area, and we're going to put a torch on the side of there so that it powers the side of this repeater and cuts off the signal. So you can see that these comparators have now gone out. So now we need a solid block there. We're going to put redstone there, there and there. And we're going to take the redstone out of that block and put it into that redstone there. Alright, sorry, that was the wrong way around. Swap these 2 comparators so that this one is pointing into the block and this one is pointing in the opposite direction. So you can now test this. If you place a minecart on there, you'll see the tracks change, and then when you break the minecart you can watch this and you'll see the redstone slowly fade, and then it will return back to normal. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the entire track selection system done. Now you've got to do the collection and return, which is arguably the easier bit. Okay, so the first step is to figure out exactly where your dropper elevator is going to be. Obviously you've got the gap here, which is where your hopper is going to go, and I'd recommend keeping this as short as possible. So your first hopper is going to go between the sand and the stone brick here. The second one will go under this log. I'd put a third one and then immediately start the dropper elevator. So your third hopper will be there, and we're going to have a dropper elevator going from there. So you will need to go to a height above the ceiling of this room. What I would do at this point is I place a 4x3 platform to hold your redstone, and on that platform you'd put a block in the corner and take that up as high as your tower, and then every second block stick one on the side, and then break all the ones behind those second blocks so that you've got a zigzag all the way up. And you want it so that there's a block 1 block away from the top dropper. So if this was 1 higher, like that, then obviously your block would be over here, and I build it up another 1. just so that this top block is always close to a hopper. So now you put on the redstone torches, you obviously interweave them in between like this. Make sure you got them on all of them, all the way up from top to bottom, and then you're going to place them on the side of the blocks nearest to the droppers. So now we need the actual detection system. We need a redstone comparator coming out into a block with a torch on the side, and then we're going to need 2 hoppers facing into each other like that, and you can check that they're facing into each other. Place 1 item, doesn't matter what it is, in either of the hoppers. At this point it doesn't matter, and then place a comparator there, and that's that. Now directly above where the minecart is going to drop, we need a hole. So if we make a space for the hole like that, and then place a second piece on the side. Over here I've done this with stair blocks. That's absolutely fine. Stair blocks, solid blocks, you can put track on top of any of them. So now we need 2 powered rails, and then we need to power those, which we can do by placing a lever onto the side of the block next to the rails. But as the dispenser is going here, we want to keep this away from the dispenser. Add another block and place the dispenser on top of it. That's not a dispenser. That's a dispenser. So now we've got the dispenser in place, we can figure out exactly how we're going to connect this to this. The easiest way to do that is to place a hopper. I'd recommend placing a chest on top of the hopper. You don't have to, you could just have a line of hoppers, but a chest allows you to hold a lot more minecarts in the system. And then simply run the hopper line over from the top of your dropper elevator like that. So your item comes up the dropper elevator, through the hopper line into the chest, and then into the dispenser. Now we need to connect this dispenser down to a button here. So first of all, we'll place the button on top like that. We go down underneath and we'll place 2 blocks and break the middle one like that. You need to bring that out like this, and then simply zigzag the signal up here. So we're going to have a block there, we're going to have a block there, another one there, one there, one there, one there, and what we're looking for is having 2 blocks together at the top going into a solid block. That allows us to put the repeater and the lit redstone torch. So this is permanently powered, and we're going to run the redstone straight down the zigzag like that, and that's it. That should be everything up and running. Obviously you need to put in your hoppers here leading into the dropper. So let's put those in. 1, 2, 3. And a rail on top of the hopper, which is powered over here, and the power carries onto the top of the hopper, but it won't actually power the hopper beneath. So that's it. That's the station all done. We can now test this. If we get some minecarts, the easiest way to test it is to just get a load of minecarts and throw them into the hopper here, and they should make their way through the system, so that when you press this button you should get one fall from the ceiling. One thing I forgot, that has to be a solid block. Let's try that again. Press the button. Yay, look at that. There we go. So we've now got hoppers falling from the ceiling, which means that the dropper elevator is working and the dispenser is connected. And obviously when we press this button, we already know that the track selection is working, but it'll power this rail, send it off, and we'll go down one of the 8 tracks. So let's pick one at random. Let's go for this one, number 6. Why not? We'll check that it works. We're on 1, 2, so 3, 4, 5, 6 is here. Hop in the minecart, press the button, it should take us down the 6th track, which it did. Look at that, fantastic. So that's it. That's the end of the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that this helps you to make your own NetherMetro. Obviously it doesn't have to be in the nether. You can make it in the end, you can make it in the overworld, entirely up to you. But thanks for watching. Please leave a like, comment, rate, subscribe, whatever you like, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.
That rhythm.